This is Gemara and Sukkah Daf Yomi. All the learning for this month, the month of Av, has been generously sponsored. The Chanishah Chesashagi and Avram Yehuda, as well Rechel Basham Shanayin Tzvi. Learning the entire Chabura should be a tremendous chazil in Nishmasam. Of course, all the men of Vega Chaim Mesar Shem Mesim and Reizi Zor Bas Kanendel. Eat the Basim Bas Chaysa Yisrael Min the Lever the Shleish Ramas the Nomi Vashavik Shechan Shmo Ben Tiyadun Cham Yisrael. Mil Chayim As Mil Librachas Tovia Musa. The name of Shimon is Rivka Bas Hashem tells him Chalester B'Tzach Shachal Yisrael as well as Chashilach V'Zal Chaim and Devaira and Shira Miriam Bas Rezel Gittel. We pick it up on the bottom of Chav Daled Amid Beis. We're in the middle of a discussion that we started yesterday at the end, after the Mishnah. The Gemara said a statement as you see over here on the bottom of Chav Daled Amid Beis. Amar Ravacha Rayakid Kol Mechitza Shen Yechol L'Lamoy Baruch Mitzuya Einoi Mechitza. A Mechitza cannot stand a normal wind, a regular wind that's going to blow. If that's going to move the Mechitza, it does not have a din of a partition, din of a Mechitza that is relevant to the halachas of Shabbos, what you could carry within those partitions. And of course, our halacha, whether it's going to be a kosher sukkah. So says the Gemara 6 lines to the bottom, asking on this din of Ravacha Bar Yaakov, Tashema. Eloin, we have a tree, Hamizach al Aretz, that is branching over, it forms a canopy, it's schach on the ground. If the branches are not higher than 3 tvachim, meaning they're within 3 tvachim of the ground, metaltlin tachtav, you let it carry underneath this canopy formed by a tree. But says the Gemara, the branches move to and fro, and therefore it should not be a mechitza. According to Rav Bar Yaakov, we'll show a picture of this in 1 second. Answers the Gemara, Hasanami, like we said before, Davilei, Bahuta v'Dafni. You made these branches in between in order to keep it sturdy, and that's the reason why you're allowed to carry. Ask the Gemara 1 second. If you're allowed to carry, you should be able to carry in this entire canopy area formed by this overhanging tree. Alama Amar Ravuna Breiter of Yeshua. Why did Ravuna Breiter of Yeshua teach us ein mitaltlin by moving over to today's daf of Chavei Amid Aleph that you're not allowed to carry ela bisa sayim. You're allowed to carry up to 2 saz amount. Misham, you're allowed to carry up to 2 saz amount. This is a concept that we spoke extensively in the Gemara Eruvin and the Gemara in Shabbos, that if you make something into a... Actually, no, let's first show the picture, and then we'll explain. Here you'll see the picture, will give you a better sense of what we're discussing, and then we'll explain. You see over here that the tree is hanging over the ground, it's in 3 tvachim of the ground, and therefore it's considered attached to the ground, and it can carry within it. The question of the Gemara and Rav Bar Yaakov was that these branches move to and fro. The answer is, as you see so beautifully over here, they put these different things in order to keep the tree straight and not move. But the Gemara now asks the question, why did it say in the Gemara Shabbos and Erev that you're only allowed to carry up till 2 Beisa, which is the concept if you make something mechitzos in order to dwell in order for an actual private residence, it can be as big as you want. But if there's a mechitza, if there's a residence, if there's partitions that are created on their own, then the halacha is you can only carry up to 2 sa, gets din of a karfith. The problem is, says the Gemara, if we're learning that the case of this tree is that you put these hoods of a dafni, you put these different staves and strings in order to hold it taut, that means that you made it into adira. If you made it into adira, into a dwelling, you should be able to carry even more than 2 sa. Answers the Gemara in the top of Chavei Amid Aleph. The reason is because the dira is a dwelling place that its usage is for the air. The reason is it's not a proper dwelling. It's true that you put things in order to hold it straight. However, it's not something that is created for a regular usage. It's something that is created for the open air outside of the dwelling, and that's the reason why you only can have this limit of 2 sa to carry within it. Tashema, the Gemara tries one more time, I believe this is attempt number 4, to discredit Rav Bar Yaakov. Says the Gemara 3 lines on the top. Shabbos betel shekva asara. If someone dwells in a tel, an amount that is 10 tvachim tall, vume arba amois ad beis asayim, and it's from 2 amois until, it's 4 amois until 2 sa large, v'chein b'neka, and so to in a clef, shu amuk asar, that is 10 tvachim deep, and again the same measurements from 4 amos till 2 sa. In the third case, kama, you have standing grains of wheat, standing stalks, kitsura v'shibailes makifais, and it's surrounded with standing stalks. It's different wheat grains and standing stalks, makifas that surrounds it. What is the halacha? Mahalech cheskula v'chutzla al payim amo. You're allowed to carry within it and outside of it 2,000 amos. Afal gav. And this is the question. The ka'azal v'asi. Even though it moves, even though these branches, even though these standing stalks, even though this mount, everything here is movable, and yet we said you're allowed to carry this dinim mechitza. But according to Rav Yaakov, it should not be true. We're actually honing in specifically on the final case, on these standing stalks. Why are you allowed to carry them? Answers the Gemara the same answer. The case is that you made them with these hutza, with these stalks and these strings to hold it taut, so it will not move. Here you see your tal, you have your mound that's within 2 sa. Here's your second case, your neka, your indent, your cleft, which is up till 2 sa. And the final case, which is what we're asking from, is the standing grain. It's built like a corn maze. And the question is, it said it can make a mechitza if they're 10 tefachim tall. Why is that true? They move. Answers the Gemara, as you see so beautifully over here, that they string them up, they hold them taut, so that it's not going to move in the wind. Says the Mishnah, Chavei Amud Aleph, a bit of a famous topic, a bit of a famous sugya we're going to touch upon for the rest of today and a bit of tomorrow. Says the Mishnah, Shluchei Mitzvah. Someone that is sent to do a mitzvah, what is the halacha? Beturim min ha-sukkah. They do not have to dwell in a sukkah. Number 2, chaylin, someone who's sick. Umisham sheyem, someone who tends to the chayla. Beturim min ha-sukkah, they don't have to dwell in the sukkah. Number 3, oichlin b'sheisin harai, chutz l'sukkah. You're allowed to eat and drink on a temporary nature outside of the sukkah. So 3 cases, someone's going to do a mitzvah, someone who is sick, or tending to someone that is sick, or eating in a temporary nature, or all categories, that do not need a sukkah. Says the Gemara, first of all, Menad, immediately where we know this from the Tana Rabbanan, Shema, says the Torah, you have to do the mitzvahs when you lie down, in your house, when you're sitting in your house, prat, what does it exclude? Mitzvah, if you're not just sitting in your house, you're doing a mitzvah. It says when you're going on the road, prat lechasan, that excludes a Kohen getting married. Mikana Amru, from here they said, HaKohen says Abasula Potter. So marries Abasula, a woman that was never married, does not have to say Shema. Vesalmana, a woman that was married, Chayiv, has to say Shema. My Mashma, now the Gemara goes into this drasha, teaching us that Oisek b'mitzvah, Patim in mitzvah, teaching us that it says B'shivtcha b'veisecha, v'levtcha v'derech, and not if you're doing a mitzvah. Explains the Gemara, Amar Avuna, Kiterech. We learn now for the fact it's like your road. Ma derech rishos. Going in the road, you can go, you cannot go. It's a rishos. It's optional. Av kol rishos. You have to do mitzvahs whenever you're involved in a permissible action and not an obligatory action. La fuke hai. This person, the mitzvah, also he's dealing with a mitzvah, and since he's dealing with a mitzvah, therefore he's going to be potter, exempt from doing other mitzvahs. Asks the Gemara, 1 second. How do you know the pasuk is referring to someone that's just doing his own thing? Milo yaskinan, maybe the pasuk is referring to tikasel dvar mitzvah, that he's belechtacha v'derech, he's going to do a mitzvah. And the Kamar Achmana, and yet the Torah says, like Riyef Shema. So maybe it's teaching me the exact opposite. That even when you're doing a mitzvah, you have to do, even when you're involved in a mitzvah, you still have to do another mitzvah. We do not say, oh, you say mitzvah, pater min mitzvah. Answers the Gemara, the Torah said, B'Shabbos, Uveleches. My b'shiftecha, you're sitting, Uvelechtecha, and you're going. From there we darshan, we learn out, Uveleches, the duch, who the mechayves, habaleches the mitzvah, but here is your own goings. That's when you're obligated. But if it's a mitzvah, then you are exempt. Asks the Gemara 1 second. If it just depends if you're doing a mitzvah. Excuse me. If someone marries a woman that's already married, he should also, it's still a mitzvah to get married, it's still a mitzvah to sleep together, so what's the reason he also should be exempt from saying Shema? Nami, asks the Gemara, says the Gemara, the answer is, when you marry a woman for the first time, tarid, you're occupied, you're involved, you can't think about anything else, and therefore that's what you're part from Kriya Shema. Whereas Koines Almana, if she already was married before, lo tarid, you're not as preoccupied, and therefore you're not going to have this exemption. So the Gemara right now thinks that what is the reason that when you're dealing with something you're exempt from a mitzvah? It thinks right now because you're tarid, because you're busy, you're preoccupied. And on that note, asks the Gemara 10 lines to the bottom. Is it true? Whenever you're tarid, whenever you're busy with something, you're pater from a mitzvah. El Meyato, asks the Gemara. Tavas v'nasa bayam, if a boat sinks at sea, titarid, you're very busy, you have a bad business dealing, you can't think straight. Hachanami depot, you should be pot for mal mitzvahs. V'chi tema, maybe you'll answer me, hachanamiya? Maybe so. Maybe anytime you're so busy, so occupied, you can't think, you're pot for a mitzvah. It can't be, says the Gemara, Rav Bar Zavda, Rav. So in the morning, who's quite preoccupied, he's still obligated in all the mitzvahs. Chutz, except for one mitzvah, minat tefillin, for putting on tefillin. Not all 7 days of Avilos, we'll see in a moment. Why? Shall remember pe'er. It says by the tefillin pe'er, beauty, and an oval is not enough situation of pe'er. So ask the Gemara, I don't understand. What is the reason you're exempt from a mitzvah? If the reason is because you're preoccupied, then you should always be exempt. But we know that's not true. So what's the reason that by a Besula, you marry a woman for the first time, you're exempt, but you marry a woman that was already married, then you're obligated? What's this differentiation? Answers the Gemara, you need both. You need mitzvah, and you need tarid, and you need to be preoccupied. If you marry a Besula, you're tarid, you're preoccupied, and it's a mitzvah. When your boat sinks, tarid tir dereshas, and therefore you're going to be obligated. So at this stage, when are you pot, or when are you exempt from doing a mitzvah? When you're doing another mitzvah that involves preoccupation, that involves something that has to have your own mind, and you can't think about anything else. Whereas marrying an alman is a mitzvah, but doesn't have the element of tarid. Ask the Gemara 4 lines to the bottom. So what comes out? So are you telling me? Ask the Gemara. We learn out from this pasuk. You're going and not doing a mitzvah. We have another makar, another source. The Tanya learned to the Brayso says the Torah of Yanashim, and they were the men Ashayu Tameim, the Nefesh Adam, that were Tamei for a Nefesh Adam, that they dealt with a mace, they dealt with a dead corpse, and therefore they're not able to bring a carbon, and that's where we see that Isaac Mitzvah, they're potter for bringing the carbon Pesach. Answers the Gemara, Isaac Anashim Mihayu. Excuse me, not answers. The Gemara now elaborates on the question. Who are these Oisam Anashim, these people that became Tamei? Says the Gemara, you know who they were? Noisei Arenisha Yosef, the carriers of the box, the coffin of Yosef, Hayu, Divrei of Yosef Glili. That's what Yosef Glili says. Turning over to Chavheim and Beis, excuse me, Rav Akiva Omer, you know these people were Meishal Vel Savan Hayu. They're Meishal Vel Safa that went into Kodesh HaKadoshim, or actually went into the Mishkan to take out Nadav and Avihu after they were burned for bringing the Eish Zara. They went in to take them out, so they became Tamei. Shoyoskin, that they were dealing with Benat Vaviu and Advaviu. And what do we see? We see that even though they were allowed to become Tamei, even though that invariably made them not able to bring the Karban Pesach, as Rashi over here points out, the dates was the first of Nisan, the Mishka was set up, and the second one they were burnt, and that's why they had to take them out. And therefore, what's going to result is that when it comes to 15th of Nisan, Rashi does all the math, they're going to be Tamei. So what do we see? They were allowed to do that. Oh, you say mitzvah, mitzvah. So why are you saying that we learned it out from Shef Rav Yitzchak Gaimer, a third opinion? Who are these people? He says they should have already had enough time to go to the mikvah. Ella says Rav Yitzchak, you know the people in this pasuk were that became Tamei. They were dealing with a mace mitzvah, so it doesn't have any relatives. The 7th day of the Tumah fell out in Erev Pesach. The pasuk says they were not able to do the Karban Pesach on that day. And the truth is, I should point out, I jumped the gun. This is the point that we're honing in on the Raya. This case, a mace mitzvah, they were allowed to tend to a mace mitzvah, which is a mitzvah, even though it was within 7 days of Pesach, and they will not be tar. Says the Gemara by Yomahu ein yichol masay. So on that day, they couldn't bring the Karban Pesach. The next day, so what do we see? Says the Gemara, we see the source for Isaac mitzvah, Patim and a mitzvah. As the Torah teaches us that they were allowed to become Tamei Meis, even though they would miss the mitzvah Karban Pesach. So why are you telling me we have to learn it out from B'Shem Pesach? We should be able to learn it out from this pasuk. Answers the Gemara about 8 lines from the top. Sricha, we need both cases. Diashmin and Hasam. If we only said that case, the case of becoming Tamei Lameis, Misham Lo Matas Manachi with the Pesach. It didn't yet come Pesach, so maybe that's the reason you're allowed to go and become Tamei Aval Hacha. But by us, the Zman Kriyishma, it's the Zman Kriyishma. So maybe, even though you're right, you're marrying a Basula, maybe you still have to say Kriyishma. Malay, you would think not. Tzricha in both cases. Diash Minan Halcha by getting married. Shouldn't like a Karis. There's no Karis by Kriyishma. Aval Hasa by Karban Pesach, think a Karis, Malay. Tzricha, that is the reason why we had to say both cases, two different sources for the concept of when does do mitzvahs, except for mother mitzvahs. We learn out when someone gets married, as well, that if you're dealing with a mitzvah, you don't have to do another mitzvah, as well as we see over here when someone is bringing the Tamei Mace, even though he missed the Karban Pesach. Says the Gemara Kufa, let's go a little bit deeper into the discussion that we just had. The discussion back from Chafei Amud Aleph, the Dina of Rava Bar Zavda Amarav. Omar Rava Bar Zavda Amarav. Ovel Chayiv V'chol HaMitzvahs Amurus B'Atayro. Chosminat Tefillin should never be be'er. Avel do all the mitzvahs aside for Tefillin, because Tefillin is a be'er, is a beauty, and an Avel is not in a situation of beauty. And now the Gemara explains this detail. Hashem told Yechezkel and Avi, Pe'erecha chavish alecha, your be'er, your glory, you should don upon yourself, referring to his Tefillin. At. So from here we learn out, only you, Yechezkel. Who the machayvis, you have to put on tefillin when you're an aval kuli alma p'tiri, but everyone else is going to be pater. And now the Gemara explains, but when is an aval pater? I'm sure many people are listening who unfortunately were avelim, and they know they put on tefillin most of the days. The answer is, v'ani mili b'yom ha'arisha, in the first day one's an aval, he doesn't put on tefillin. The pasuk says, v'achrisel yikiyamar, and the day after the p'tira, after the death, is the yoymar, is a bitter day. So for that day, one does not put on tefillin. Of course, this has nothing to do with the dinim of aninos, which we've spoken extensively about. Any time between the death and the burial, that's a separate stage, a separate exemption. Here we're talking about after the burial. Still, the first day of Avelos, one does not put on tefillin. Why? Because pe'erecha chavish alecha, only you, Yechezkel, put in your pe'er, but no one else would put on such while he is in Avel, because he's not in a situation of pe'er, of beauty. V'amar Rav Abba bar Zavda Marav, Ovel chayiv b'sukkah. Ovel has to eat in the sukkah. Says the Gemara Shkohech Pshita, of course. Ma'u the teim wants to have me, and I would have thought a hoil. V'amar Rav Bar Zavda Amarav mitzta'er pater min ha'sukkah. Someone is in pain, he does not have to eat in the sukkah. Hainami mitzta'er hu, and Ovel is in pain. So you would think maybe he doesn't have to eat in the sukkah. Kamash Malah, no. Hanimili tzayir dememela. If being in the sukkah, is that which is causing you pain, that's when you're exempt. Avalach over here, you to come mitzayer nafshei, he's in pain for another reason, for his avilus, for his death. Therefore, calm yourself down and go and eat in the sukkah. So there's no exemption of a sukkah because you are in a situation of avilus. And one more ruling, one more din says the Gemara of Amarav Razavda Marav. Chasa, someone who gets married, those who are celebrating with the chasa and the wonderful mitzvah of Simchas Chasa V'Kala, V'chol b'nei HaChuppah, and everyone else that's part of the family, part of the wedding, V'turim min ha'sukkah, don't need a sukkah. Kol shiva, all 7 days. My taima, what's the reason? Should the boy lemechtei v'lichlei v'sukkah. You know the reason is because you have to. My taima mishom. One more time, mishom the boy lemechtei. The reason is because you have to rejoice. You have to rejoice with the marriage, and therefore you can't do that if you go into the sukkah. Asks the Gemara, I don't understand. You're right. You have to rejoice. Simchas Chasa Mikala for 7 days. So go into the sukkah. Answers the Gemara, Ein Simcha Ella b'chuppah. There's only rejoicing where the chuppah is, where the Chas and Nikal are building their house. Says the Gemara, okay, v'lech le b'sukkah. So eat in the sukkah, v'lech le b'chuppah. And then let them rejoice inside their chuppah. What's the problem? Answers the Gemara, Ein Simcha Ella b'makayim suda. That's all be at the same place. Says the Gemara, the obvious question, v'lev de chuppah b'sukkah. Great. So make the whole wedding inside the sukkah. Let them start living inside the sukkah. Two answers. Abaye Omar, Mishum Yichud. There's a yichud problem. The sukkah can be high up on top of a house, and if the chassan and kala are told to live there to start off their marriage, the chassan might go out for a little bit to take a stroll, and another man might come in and be in a situation of yichud with his wife, and therefore that is not allowed. We'll just parenthetically point out that we've wrote about this in the Yichud book extensively. We see from here a big rule in Yichud. The Yichud does not necessarily have to be secluded. As we'll see in a moment, a sukkah is not necessarily secluded. Secluded in the lock sense. It has to be secluded in the sense that there's no one there. You might not have a lock on the door, but if there's no one within miles, that also could be Yichud. So if the sukkah is on the roof and no one's coming up, that as well could be a situation of Yichud. For Rav Amar, second answer, Misham Sar Chasan, because the Chasan is going to be in pain for if he has to make his beginning of his marriage and the sukkah might be nayu, he can be nayu. The difference is the shchit people are always there, so therefore there's no problem because there's always people there. There still is the Sar Chas, and the Chassan is still in pain, and Rashi points out because he doesn't have any privacy there. He just starts off his marriage, he wants a little bit of privacy, and being in a sukkah is not good for him. We'll pick it up from Amar Avzera, continuing this discussion at the beginning of the marriage, whether it potentially could be in the sukkah, or if the Batur, like the Mishnah spoke out, will stand. We'll pick up from here tomorrow.